Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to episode 357 of The Unstarving Musician. I'm Robonzo. This is my podcast. How are you? Thank you for being here today. What are you wearing? Where are you? How's your weather? How are the kids? The dog? I hope everything's great for you in your world. Before I get into today's episode, I want to encourage you to check out Liner Notes, the free newsletter from yours truly. Liner Notes delivers bi-weekly insights from 300-plus conversations with working artists and industry professionals who figured out how to make a sustainable living from their creativity. You can sign up at unstarvingmusician.com/liner notes. It's free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. My guest for this episode is George Macias, co-founder of Lumoza, a free music rights registration platform for independent artists where you upload your song and it's registered where it needs to be so you actually get paid. Lumoza creates a digital birth certificate for every song, which is a permanent record of who made it and when. And that helps take care of your registering of your work with the organizations that pay out your royalties. Lumoza was built by George and his co-founders who have spent years inside the major label and publishing world, watching artists lose money to paperwork and processes nobody explained to them, or that they found overwhelming. In this conversation, George and I talk about the pattern he saw repeatedly on the publisher side that made him think independent artists needed some help, how Lumoza wants to marry metadata and the song at the beginning of the process, the misunderstanding among indie artists that they register with the distributor and think they're done, the basics of publishing rights and master rights, the basics of distributor versus rights layers, the significance of AI music in all of this. You'll find an article link I included in the show notes about AI music uploads to Deezer and other DSPs, and his one recommendation for the thing artists should build into their recording session process regardless of what tool they use, and more, much more. You can learn more about Lumoza at lumoza.io. That's lumoza.io. And now, here is my conversation with George Macias of Lumoza. Tell me about spending 20 plus years inside publishers and societies and running UMPG's production music division before starting Lumoza.
Yeah, so I've spent the better part of 2 decades, like you mentioned, in the music industry, both on the publishing side as well as on the master recording side, primarily through production music, which is music that's tailor-made and specifically for use in other things, TV shows, films, commercials, video games, etc. And kind of worked my way up. I started at a company called APM Music, which is still one of the biggest ones. And my career trajectory has kind of always had work at a big company, stop, do a startup, go back to a big company. And the last role that I had was, as you mentioned, was the general manager for Universal Music's production music arm globally, which has offices in over 30 countries and represents a fairly good market share chunk of all of the production music around the world.
So what's the moment or pattern you saw repeatedly on the publisher side that made you think independent artists needed something different?
There's really 2 things. One is, through my experience, not only on the production music side, but I also worked inside the major music companies and inside the big machine, both at EMI Publishing as well as Universal Publishing, which is very integrated as a business. And what I've noticed is there was something that was always kind of, scratching or an itch in the back of my neck that I was never able to really scratch. And that was that the money flowed, but the money didn't necessarily always flow the way that it was supposed to. And it wasn't because of any malice. It wasn't because anybody was trying to deny someone money, but what I was realizing was how easy it is for something to stop working the way that it's supposed to. So, for example, if your name is Tom and you spell it Tom, but someone processes it or keys it in as THOM, the money will stop flowing. So what I realized is that there are just so many instances where things can break And that breakage then resulted to real consequences down the road. And that consequence is in the form of people not getting the money that they're owed, the money flowing to the wrong individuals. And so the money all gets paid out, but it just doesn't necessarily go to the people that actually earned it. And during the times that I was away from the big music companies and working in startups on my own, what I realized is that the problem is a little bit deeper than just what I'm describing, in that if you understand the psyche of a creator or an artist, they want to create, they want to make music, they want to pour their heart and soul into what they're recording. They don't necessarily want to deal with all the admin stuff or all the administrative stuff, the stuff that's boring, the stuff that is not really, fun for them. It's not fun for anybody, but because of that, it makes it easy to ignore. And when they ignore it, they're just exacerbating this problem. And what I realized, and what really pushed me to create Lumoza, is the realization that it's a problem that can be solved, but no one is necessarily trying to solve it. And so our entire approach is starting with an education first standpoint and platform to help people understand the things that need to happen so that they give themselves a fighting chance, so that they earn the money that they deserve.
That makes sense. And the example you gave was one that I'm familiar with, or just have written about, read about, talked about metadata,
Yeah.
not being right. Walk me through what first mile registration actually means in practice, and what happens at the point of creation typically.
The first mile for us is basically being able to marry the metadata, or the data part of a song's DNA, and do that right as close to the beginning as you possibly can. Now, one of the big misunderstandings I think that happen in the market, and I've talked to enough independent artists that this seems to be kind of pervasive, which is that an indie artist will write a song, they'll go on DistroKid or CD Baby or TuneCore, and they'll get their song up on Spotify, Apple Music, etc., and they think that they've done everything that they needed to do. And the reality is that they've only done part of the work. Distributors don't necessarily help with the rest of the metadata that's required. And in fact, the system is designed in a way where you can actually upload a song to a distributor and get it on Spotify without all of the right data there. So from the very beginning, it's kind of already a little bit broken. Now, it happens that way for actually a good reason in practice, which is that you don't want to put a lot of friction into the process for an artist to be able to get a song up, right? So you want them to be able to write their song, do whatever they're going to do as quickly as they can, and get it up on streaming. And so the intent is great. But in practice, what's happening is that the way that happens is the distributors of the world will allow those songs to go up without all of the right information. So when we describe the first mile, or when I think of the first mile, it is making sure that you have at least the bare minimum of the right registrations on your data, so that you can attribute that song ownership to yourself or to whoever your co-writers or performers are, etc. So that when it does go up, it can have, all of the information that it needs to be able to get paid out properly. So where it's kind of lost is that people don't necessarily understand that. So they will get their streaming, statements and royalties back from Spotify. But again, it's not all of the money that they should be earning. In fact, it's probably less than half.
Oh man, that's disheartening. But I can see it. When you publish something for the first time, you think, oh, this kind of looks like they're trying to help me. Which I know that you stated it as they're not necessarily trying to do anything wrong. They're just trying to keep the friction low, as you said. But I was going to mention a moment ago, a case in point to thinking you're done. I kind of knew I wasn't. I've written about these things that we're going to talk more about today, and I've talked to others about it in various capacities. But something I had never done until our going through my notes for our conversation inspired me to go to Sound Exchange and I had an account, but I'd never registered my music there. So I went through and just did that yesterday. And it was just a reminder that, yeah, there's a lot of little things that hang out waiting for you to do on your own accord that your distributors aren't necessarily going to take care of you for or remind you of or whatever.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And you're not in the minority. You're actually in the majority. And it's funny, when I deal with, young independent artists in particular, they may not even know what a copyright registration is or why it's important. And so that's kind of challenge number one. And then beyond that, it's exactly like you said. So taking the US for an example, you've already mentioned the second piece. So there's kind of multiple things that have to happen with a song to make sure that it's attributed properly. So the song has to be registered as a copyright. You can do that with the US Copyright Office, or you can do that through various performing rights organizations that exist here in the US. In the US, there are four of them, four majors. But that only handles the copyright part of it. There's also the sound recording side of it. And on the sound recording side, like you said, there is Sound Exchange, and there is another collection society called the MLC.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the MLC and Sound Exchange and the Copyright Office for the government or any of the PROs, none of them necessarily exchange data. So if you register a song with a PRO, they won't tell Sound Exchange, hey, Sound Exchange, by the way, this song has been registered and here's the information so that you could do what you do. They leave it all on up to the individual owner to do that all themselves. So what you're describing that happened to you happens every single day. In fact, I was talking to a very prolific writer that actually has been a touring musician for decades and actually toured with the Grateful Dead for a long time. And he said, I just realized that last month I uploaded 3 new songs to Spotify and I forgot to register them. And so there is no mechanism right now on any side of this, kind of all of this machination that happens that reminds someone that all of this stuff has to take place. And so it has to be triggered in some way to remind them, or you have to come up with a way to be able to do it as passively as possible. In other words, just kind of doing it automatically in the background if you can. And if you do that, then at least you're setting people up to get what they rightfully deserve.
Yeah, and I'll have to go back and look at my little checklist. I have a release checklist, and I don't release. I've released a couple of songs, but even with the checklist, I bet I'm going to go see that the whole Sound Exchange is on there, and I got partway through, and I just forgot about it, like you said. It's very common, so it's amazing, the system, honestly. The more I learn about it and the more I talk about it over, repeatedly, I'm amazed it works at all because it's so distributed. But
Yeah.
it's nice that there are companies like yours that are trying to make it easier, trying to kind of provide a basis for covering the artist who might otherwise forget or just not realize some things are happening or have trouble keeping track of it. So
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I've covered in my past in some past editions of my liner notes newsletters the following, but can you break down the difference between publishing rights and master rights for someone who's never had to think about it? Why does one get protected by distribution platforms and not the other? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe just sort of a 101 would be great for some listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So when someone releases a song, you can think of the song as having two halves. One half is the composition, so that's the written notes, the written lyrics, and the other is what's called the sound recording, and that's the actual performance of the song. So if you think of it from that perspective, when you think of the copyright, that copyright will create certain things. You can register your music with your ownership, and now it's protected against someone else infringing on that. You can also use that in sign up for a royalty collection society in the US. The two big ones are ASCAP and BMI, and they will collect royalties against your copyrights, and they will pay you for the use of your music. The sound recording side is kind of the other half of the song, and that's the performed work. And there are bodies like Sound Exchange and some of the revenue that you'll generate from streaming services that will be paid out specifically for that recorded work. And in that case, if you think of the two sides, the copyright side will handle all of the writers that created the music. The sound recording side will handle not only the spoken sound recording, but also that's how performers get paid and producers can get paid for that.
Yep. It's all coming back to me. Yeah, it's funny. As extensively as I have written about this and spoken with listeners and also on the podcast, it's just a lot to retain.
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and I just wanted to comment on one thing because you said something that was really insightful, which is, it is a complicated system. And right now, our conversation has been limited just to the US. Now, the great thing about music is that it's a universal language. No pun intended on the universal word. But the reason why I say that is because you can enjoy music. It doesn't matter where it was created. If it resonates with you, you can enjoy it. And so today more than ever, music is global. It's not just in one particular territory, regardless of where it was created. And unfortunately, the way that I just described how it all works in the US, it works that way in every country on earth, except with very specific nuances and minor differences. So when you think of registering your works with like a sound exchange or a royalty society here in the US, you not only have to unfortunately do that here, but if you want your music, if you want to get the money that you're owed from Canada, you have to do that in Canada. Same thing in the UK, same thing in South Korea, etc. And so when you think of it that way, the problem of metadata or these rights is not limited to 3 or 4. It can actually be dozens or hundreds of intersecting points that happen for just one song. And then on top of that, if you take the sound recording side and you create 5 versions of the same song, now you multiply that by 5. So you can see how this web of data kind of continues to expand the farther out the reach it is, except that every single one of those points have the same level of importance. So if your music is getting a lot of streams in Saudi Arabia, but it's not set up properly, that money will just not end up flowing to you, unfortunately.
It's maddening. What's the distributor versus rights layer distinction, and how does that separate what Lumoza does from what, say, a DistroKid or TuneCore does?
Yeah, so a distributor like DistroKid, TuneCore, CD Baby, any one of those, what their job is that they will take your work and they will help facilitate putting it up onto the streaming services here in the US and globally. And so depending on who you go with, they have different business models on how they do that, but that is basically they're a facilitator or a pipe into the streaming platforms. A rights layer is very different than that. A rights layer is about making sure that the song's ownership is identified, it's known, and it is able to be given to the right parties so that the money that's generated from the use of a song goes to the right parties. Unfortunately, everything that we've been talking about today, when that doesn't happen, then things break. And I'll give you an example with the MLC here in the US, which collects mechanical royalties for music on radio, streaming services, etc. And when they don't know who to pay, what happens is the money will go into a side bucket that is called unclaimed earnings. And if enough time goes by, unfortunately, they don't know where that money goes. Eventually, they distribute it and they give that money out, but they distribute it in the form of market share. So you can think now that a major music company like Universal, if they have 30% of the global market, they'll get 30% of that money. But unfortunately, there isn't a direct association between how they got the money or who actually deserved the money. So there's just all of these opportunities for things to go awry, so to speak.
And like the MLC example, that's just one example of where, tell me if I'm correct, that unpaid funds will go into like an unclaimed bucket, as you said, and eventually get distributed as you described. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct. And in fact, that happens on every country on the planet. Most countries are governed by their local laws, but they all have to do what are called mandatory distributions, which means that they cannot, by law, hold on to that money forever. So in some territories, it may be every 2 years. In other territories, it may be every 3 years. The MLC, for example, by their own data and by their own information that they share, the last time I looked, they were sitting on almost $500 million
Oh man.
in monies that they didn't know where it went. And they were going to do a distribution this year. And so how that ties back into this idea of the first mile is that if you don't have your music set up properly, and if enough time goes by, even if you set it up later, the money may already be gone. And once it's gone and it's been given out, there's no way to get it back. That distribution has happened, and there is no mechanism for you to be able to get it back. You have a very small window when you can say, oh, look, actually, I am Tom, but it's not THOM, it's TOM, to use my earlier example. And you can do that, but that window is usually about anywhere from 6 months to a year. After that, then the money's pretty much lost forever.
Well, I didn't realize it was that window was that short. I thought there, and maybe there are some examples where it goes beyond a year, but and even in some cases for maybe a few years, but that could be bad memory or bad information.
No, actually, you're absolutely right. For example, in France, it's 3 years, and so
Okay.
it varies. It varies by territory. The one thing that I actually think that this window is much shorter than that, and but not because of a rule, but more because of the way that our brains work. And what I mean by that is if you touch a piece of information and it's kind of at the top of your mind, you're more apt to do something with it. Once it's kind of in the mental filing cabinet and you've moved on,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not going to happen, right? And actually that could be as little as 60 days. And so this window, depending on how you look at it, can be very, very compressed. And even though you might have a longer window, it's sort of like, if you go online and you pay for, you want to sign up for a rebate or something. If you don't do it right away, chances are you never will. You've just already kind of moved on, right?
Yeah.
So the way to fix this is to hopefully do as much of this as you can up front in as frictionless way as possible so that you don't even have to worry about it.
Is there a habit or workflow you'd recommend artists build into their session process, regardless of what tool they use?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things, if I could give artists one recommendation, it would be this: know and settle who owns what as soon as possible. I have seen major songs just released by A-list artists through Universal, through EMI, where the ownership rights of that song are not settled. And that's a recipe for disaster. Because if you don't know if you and I wrote a song together and we own it 50-50, but we don't decide that up front, now there's a problem down the road, especially if the song starts taking off, right? Now there's an argument between us saying, well, I wrote more, you wrote more, I own more. So the one piece of advice would be make sure that you know your ownership and it's settled as quickly as possible. It doesn't have to be settled on day one, and I'm actually not recommending people don't put their music up on DistroKid. That's not what I'm saying at all. They do want to get it out there, but take care of that as quickly as you possibly can. It's just going to create problems if you don't. And where there's money and there's potential for conflict, then there's just going to be some challenges down the road for you.
Yeah, that's incredible. To imagine that you've had multiple experiences seeing that type of thing happen with major artists. Incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and believe it or not, it happens all the time. And it's because if you think about it, there is people don't necessarily want to have discussions that are conflict ridden, right? So if we're writing a song together, it's not a natural part of the process for us to sit down and say, okay, so who are we, who's going to own what? Or are we just going to split it all down the middle? Which would be perfectly fine and fair if that's how someone wants to do it. But have that discussion early. It will save you a lot of challenge and headache down the road.
I had a co-write on one of the two songs that I released, and I had that conversation early. It was kind of a relaxed thing, and then shared the split sheet proposal as quick as I could, and it all went smoothly, which was great. And it was working with someone who's very amenable to being a contributor, but I'm sure everybody's situation varies, and to me it was just like, okay, I know this is important. I have a brother who was in music when he was younger, and so he really harped on me about copyright right away. And the music business has changed so much since he was in it. There was none of this digital distribution, and perhaps not even as many layers for a royalty collection. I'm not sure, or they were different. So anyway, I suppose that was lucky for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to bring one thing up. We've been our conversation has centered a good deal on distribution platforms and getting your music up on streaming. But of course, there are other ways to make music, to make money with music. And one is to license your music for synchronization. Again, getting your music placed into a TV show or a commercial. And I can give you a good example. If you kind of think back, there is not a lot of early hip hop that you ever hear in TV or in a commercial or in a film. There's a good reason for that. And it's because back in the day, when hip hop was very nascent, there might be 20 different writers that are credited with a piece of a song. Because you would give your buddies or your friends, you would give them 1% or 2%. And what ended up happening is that when a song is going to be used in something else, like a Netflix movie, for example, all of the parties that are listed as owners on a song have to agree to allow the song to be used. In other words, I could own 2% of a song and say no, and it doesn't get used. And because of that, it was very complicated early in the day to clear and get all the rights you needed to be able to use a lot of like early hip hop. And so that's really that's why you don't really hear it that much. And where you do hear it, it's because it was inherent to whatever the vision of the project was. So they went through the hard work of really tracking everybody down. And a lot of these cases, people don't even know that they got a small piece of a song,
Right.
And so, but a lot of that is changed nowadays. But again, I think it just speaks to the fact that, to me, the easier you can make it for someone to want to use your music, the easier you can make it for someone to find your music, enjoy it, the bigger the chance is that you're going to be able to make some money with it. So to me, it kind of speaks to try and be as complete and accurate as you can on the data side, so that when someone goes and finds your song for whatever reason or for whatever use, there are no barriers. Because unfortunately, if there is a barrier, you're never even going to hear about it. So if an ad agency finds your song and they say, I want to use this song, this is really great, they'll go online and they'll find who owns it. And if all of the information's there, they'll probably reach out. If they see missing gaps, they won't reach out. And you'll never even know that they were considering your song. So to me, it's all about being as prepared as you can be to just give yourself that chance. And you never know what's going to happen, right? One song placed in an ad or one song on a TV show can be the difference between tens of thousands of streams or millions of streams, right? Or tens of millions of streams. So to me, anything you can do, it just is in an artist's best interest to do so.
Yeah, right. I was thinking when you said it can be the difference between, and I was thinking to finish that a great year and just another mediocre year.
That's right. Absolutely. 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 And to me, I've always marveled, and I've spent, enough time in studios in my career. Unfortunately, I don't have the creative gift to make music, but it has always just been so fascinating and just amazing to me that someone can create something out of nothing. And I think that it's our responsibility, or I view it as my obligation to make sure that this doesn't become simply a hobby for people. The worst thing in the world would be that people can't make money at making music. Because if they do that, if they can't, then now it is just a hobby. And that would be an absolute shame to me. I think of like a painter or a sculptor. There are many of them that are very successful, but most people don't think I'm going to be a sculptor for a career. Musicians do, and anyone that chooses to be or to use music as a career, they deserve every opportunity. And if they're willing to put the time and effort into it, then they deserve a fair shot at being able to live off of that.
It's a great point. Having spoken with so many musicians who teeter between aspirational career musician and hobbyist, so it's a really, really great point. Why not do it right and be prepared for the opportunity that may come?
Yeah, absolutely.
If someone's about to walk into the studio tomorrow, what's one thing you tell them to do before they hit record on top of getting the who's getting what part?
Well, the very first thing that I would tell them to do is to join a performing rights society as a writer, whether that's ASCAP, BMI, whoever they want to choose. But make sure that you join one of the societies, because if you don't, then it's just going to be a delay and another step that you're going to have to do. And I would do the same thing with Sound Exchange, and I would do the same thing with the MLC. Now, I did mention earlier that this problem is amplified globally because every country has its own societies and its own structure. But the societies here and Sound Exchange and MLC can help you do that. So they can help register your works, your music in other territories, and you can and they can help you collect as well if that's what you want to do. But the most important thing for anyone that writes music is you want to have what is called an IPI number, and that you get assigned through any society that you join. And it's your unique identifier. It's your driver's license number, your passport number, whatever it is. Once you have that, then you're in the system. And now when you add music, you're eliminating that one layer or that one chance of things not going or being attributed to the right person. I would say that. The other piece of advice I would give for anybody is keep track of who's in the room, keep track of your session files, so that if there ever is anything that happens later on in the day, that you can have something to refer back to, which is very, very important. It's more important today than it's ever been, particularly because of the influx of AI-generated music. The reason why this is so important is because, and it goes back to this to the idea of making sure that your rights and your data is correct, is that you want to be able to prove not only that a song that you created is yours, but also that it was created by a human being and not by an AI algorithm. And that's really important as well. In a lot of different areas, I can give you an example on the synchronization side. So a lot of companies, ad agencies, for example, will not use AI-generated music inside of a commercial. And the reason being is because They don't want to have to worry about any potential liability, number one. Number two, they need a legal document that says they have the right to use this and that they're not going to be an issue, because an ad agency is a middleman, right? So the last thing that they want to do is create an issue for their client. And there have been big examples of that in the past. And so if you have a piece of music that you say, here it is, here's what I wrote, here's all of the information around it. And oh, by the way, I can prove that this song was created by me or was created by me with other human beings. That is also another step that will just eliminate that friction of someone, moving on from whatever your work is. And I think the issue with AI music is only going to continue to get worse. And my perspective on that is that there is some AI music that may be perfectly good to use, and it may be perfectly fine, and people can find it very enjoyable. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. But I do think that people or consumers deserve to understand and know the difference of what they're hearing, because it's so much of a big part of who we connect with and why we love a song is not only the song itself, it's the artist that the song is connected to. And that just makes it so much more meaningful. So we can still enjoy an AI generated song, but it's just not the same. And so understanding the difference is going to be more and more and more important. And in fact, I think that there's going to come a day relatively soon where streaming services will begin to kind of show the difference. So, you can almost think of it like maybe a song when you're doing a search on Spotify or something might have a little green check mark or something, and the green check mark means this is an actual human created song, and if it doesn't have a check mark, it was created by AI. Again, nothing wrong with that, but now as a consumer, I have the ability to choose and know what it is that I'm consuming or what I'm listening to. The other reason why that is going to be really important is I do think that there is a strong argument to be made that if I have my music up on Spotify, that I have, toiled and sweat and poured my heart and soul into it, that deserves a different royalty rate than something that was generated on an AI music platform. And I think that that's what's going to happen. So in the future, hopefully what we'll see is there's peaceful coexistence. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, but that there is a mechanism that exists to make it fairer so that people that actually took the time to create something are deservedly paid at a different and higher rate. That would be a wonderful outcome, in my opinion.
Sure, and that's a overall great viewpoint to me, having talked just a little bit with others about AI and music. And you made me think of something kind of on the side. I have a friend who has, I don't know how much he's doing it today, but he's created a lot of AI music, and I just had this thought that has maybe little or nothing to do with what we're really focused on today, but is that sharing his own story, if he was inclined to do so, about who
Yeah,
he is and why he's inspired to do these different things outside of just, well, I noticed people seem to click on this one. It
yeah.
might actually give him sort of an artist vibe, because this person actually happens to be an interesting individual who's been in the entertainment world professionally, and so maybe has a chance of clicking with some people anyway. Like I'm not a I'm sure I've heard some and thought maybe that's pretty cool. Not speaking of my friend's music necessarily, but I'd rather hear music by people, because I'm a musician and I'm so old, and but I mean, it's certainly fascinating what we can do with AI and music, and especially as a tool for helping us suss things out, or ideas, and I'm also reminded, kind of side note too, of what the Rolling Stones recently did with one of their songs that they wrote in
Yes.
an AI generated video, which was pretty cool, but a little. I've been a fan of theirs for so many years. I'm embarrassed to say how many, but it was also kind of strange to see it, but I didn't get creeped out. It was like, oh, that's kind of nice. I mean, it's strange to see them
Yeah.
so old now, so I didn't mind seeing the rendition of them young again.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I will say that you know AI music or the idea of using AI to me as a tool, I think is fantastic. I use AI tools every day in everything, in a lot of the things that I do. And and I do think that there is an absolute place for it on the creation side of things, as an adjunct to the creative process. The other thing that AI is doing on the music side of things is that it's opening up a world to people that might not otherwise have all of the training or experience or knowledge that they need to be able to make it on their own. And again, I think that that's all great. The thing that gives me, hope about all of this is that the industry as a whole today is handling this technological change a lot different than the last big go around, which was the days of Napster, right? The days of Napster, the industry was trying to do everything that it could to stamp it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget the day that I read that the RIAA, which is the Record Label Association, was suing a 12-year-old girl in Long Island, New York for like $180,000 for copyright infringement. And I just remember thinking to myself that this is not the right way to do this, but it just amplified the just how silly this whole posture was. The good thing today, though, is that I think that the industry learned its lesson because Napster almost set the industry really on its heels, right? And it almost killed it in a lot of ways. And we went from a model where people bought albums and CDs to where people streamed music, but the industry survived. It just had to transform itself. And I think that AI music is another one of those examples. The good thing this time, though, is that I think that rather than trying to kill it, which will not happen, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. Now they're trying to find ways to embrace it. And I do think that that opens the door for people to have these kinds of discussions, which is, okay, listen, if you like an AI generated song or an AI generated artist, great. As long as you know the difference and you're more than welcome to enjoy them, right? And so we are, I think, in a different place than we were 10, 15 years ago. And hopefully that means that we're working towards, making it a fair kind of place for everybody that's involved.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy and reminder, little historical reminder of that time compared to now. Well, George, I very much appreciate your time. It's been great speaking with you. And I look forward to putting this episode out. How'd we do?
Oh, no, fantastic. Listen, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for the time. And this might sound counterintuitive for an entrepreneur to say, but I do think that we are at a place today where this problem is going to be solved. I'd love to be able to look you in the eye and say it's going to be my company that solves it, and maybe it will, and maybe it won't. But where we are in 2026, from a technology standpoint, from an AI standpoint, from a data standpoint, this is nothing more than a problem that just needs to be fixed, and we can do it, and we can do it in a way that will benefit everyone. And really, that's what gets me up in the morning. I mean, at this point, I'm just having so much fun with this. We've got a long road ahead, but I'm really optimistic. And so anything that I can do to help, happy to do so. I have all kinds of stats and stuff. So if you want to shoot me over a newsletter anytime, or I'm happy to kind of, give you my perspective.
Great, man. Thanks. I appreciate the optimism too.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. I appreciate you. Thanks a lot and have a great day.
Likewise. Yeah, you do the same. Take care now.
As an independent podcaster, your support means the world to me. You could even say I depend on it. With that in mind, here are some things you can do to help support the podcast. Follow The Unstarving Musician on your favorite podcast app, leave a review on your favorite podcast app, or shoot a review to me by email, robonzo@unstarvingmusician.com, or just share this episode with a friend. This all has a big impact on our audience growth. Visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowdsponsor to learn about the other ways of supporting the podcast, including a quick and easy online tip jar. Click, tip, done. Easy and super appreciated. You'll find many other ways to support the podcast there, including through our affiliate partners, our online merch store, and more. The music you're hearing is New Gods Part 2, the instrumental mix by yours truly. You can hear, download, and or buy the full version with vocals by yours truly at robonzo.com. If that was all too much to remember or process, just go to the show notes for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com to find links to all this and the stuff I talked about in today's episode. You can leave feedback, questions, comments, complaints at unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. Thanks for listening. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.